So every summer for the last 18 years, the city of New York takes like a handful of weekend days and calls them summer streets. And what they do is they close down like the biggest avenues in all 5 boroughs, and they're just open to people on like bikes and skateboards and stuff. It's like a citywide party. What are you running?
Yeah, I like peak sun runs.
Get those miles.
Good to see ya.
Summer Streets felt like a prime place to try out the new X6.
Oh, Casey! What's up?
I've been working with Insta360 for like 3 or 4 years now. I'm a fan of their stuff. I'm a fan of how quickly they innovate. This was their 360 camera 2 years ago, this was last year, and this is their latest flagship 360 camera. I think the best way to sum up what this is, what the innovation here is, I feel like this was like consumer maybe, this was more prosumer, and this latest offering, it verges on like a professional capable 360 camera. Behind me here is the Park Avenue Tunnel on 33rd Street. Now, technically, legally, you're never allowed to like go through it, technically. But they opened it today for everyone. It's all bikes going through the tunnel. Are we allowed to go on these?
I mean, there's no tape.
All right, we found a staircase in the tunnel. I mean, no one's here. There's no signs that say you can't go up here. But check this out. What do you think this is?
It's gonna be the exit.
Do you think this opens?
Yeah. Give it a pull, maybe?
No, it's definitely that's either a ground or an alarm. So I'm just gonna leave. We should get out of here.
All right, let's go.
Hey, Casey!
Happy Summer Streets!
Happy summer streets!
So this has dual 1-inch sensors in it. That means you get, better dynamic range, much better low light. It means when you're shooting 360, you're shooting at an 8K, 50 frames per second. It also means that when you have one of the lenses off, you shoot like you would use this like an action camera. You have that full 1-inch sensor behind it, which makes this a really good action camera. It makes me wonder what the future of action cameras is, if this is just gonna kind of cannibalize everything in that genre. Okay, this is equally elusive on foot or skateboard or bike, but the little route around Grand Central is open. Have a good day. You see these ladies? You see these ladies? Sometimes you'll see rock bands playing in this city, but I've never seen a band before that's all like middle-aged women just rocking out.
Not by sex, but in terms of go. Offer a ancient French expression, rock joy.
These ladies are awesome.
They're so good.
They're shredded.
I just want to say hi. I'm such a fucking big fan.
How's your summer street going?
The best.
The best, right?
The best.
How's your summer streak going?
The best.
The best, right?
The best.
How's your summer streets going?
Great, great. We do it every year.
What's your mobility?
You're looking at it. You want to?
No,
It's not electric.
I'm more of a skateboard guy myself. You guys look great on those scooters.
Thank you.
When you do a brand deal for like Insta360, they send you this internal confidential spec list, and it's all the specifications of this device, and they want you to talk about those specs. Things like dual custom Sony 1.1 inch sensors, industry first native Dolby Vision plus 10-bit color, in-house developed 360 AI multimodal model, zero editing for. It's hard for me to get excited about specs. I don't care about specs. I'm not a huge gear guy. For me, something either works or it doesn't. It does the job I want it to do, or it's something that stands in my way. A good example is this camera I'm talking to you now on. This big SLR camera right here, see it? I got this camera like 8 or 9 years ago, and since getting it, there's never a need for me to upgrade. It just does what I want. It's like a hammer. It always works. And I never thought of a 360 camera like that. It's always, am I doing something action-y? Do I want a weird shot? That's where a 360 camera fits in. But because of how like dynamic the capabilities are of this, it's now something that I'll always bring with me. I'm going on a fun little adventure with Jordan to look at summer streets. Bring this. I know it's gonna work in low light. I know I'll just throw it out there, click record, and the shot's gonna look good. I also know I can cut it in with this footage. This moment in particular, like this guy had a DJ setup, a little one, laptop, on his lap while he was riding a city bike. And I was holding my SLR trying to film him, but I wanted a shot right in front of his bike. City laptop on his This moment in particular, like this guy had a DJ setup, a little one, laptop, on his lap while he was riding a city bike. And I was holding my SLR trying to film him, but I wanted a shot right in front of his bike. I threw Jordan this SLR camera. He threw me this on a selfie stick. And I was riding next to him with the camera right. That's how I got that shot. And I knew that it would cut in well enough with this huge fancy pro camera. It would look good enough where I wouldn't have to worry about it. Water bottle. And I knew that shot. And I knew that it would cut in well enough with this huge fancy pro camera. It would look good enough where I wouldn't have to worry about it. Water bottle, tripod, not recommended. Or this, I thought it'd be funny if like Jordan and I had a back and forth while we were eating. It ended up not being that great. The dialogue wasn't good. But I decided to shoot it on this instead of this because I could do that swish panty thing. They should do it year round. They should do it every weekend. Why don't you eat your food first, Jordan? Thank you very much, sir. How you doing? Thank you. I think the takeaway here is that with all the technical innovation in this camera, it's no longer just for like crazy 360 shots or for action shots. That it's now just a camera I always have to have with me because I know it's always going to get the shot because it can always do the thing, whatever that thing is. Nice work, Insta360. Thanks for sponsoring the video. Now I gotta get back to the wife and kids. I'm home.
Calvary Church is dedicated. Calvary
shares that there are no fewer than 330 questions asked. But how many of you honestly have read the book of Job already before? Okay. See, I didn't want to say how many of you have not read. That's kind of an embarrassing way to do it. So there's a good chunk of you that have. Most of you have. I like to tell the story that I had a roommate that, and I'm careful not to mention his name because he's still living, but he was a roommate when I was living in Santa Ana and Huntington Beach, and he refused to read this book because he was unemployed at the time. And he thought it was the book of Job. And he felt that if he read it, he would just be utterly convicted of his laziness, and it's going to be all about that. And when I found that out, I said, David, well, I just said his name, David. David, if you're listening, I love you. But yeah, this is the book of Job, the book of Job. You know, it's an interesting phenomenon that I've discovered that whenever I set out to teach a series or a book of the Bible, that the Lord does not want to waste the opportunity, and that he will allow me to experience, in part, some truth that is contained in that book. And the last time that I taught the book of Job on a Sunday morning series many years ago, I announced that I was going to do it. People were excited because of the way we were going about it. It was going to be the questions of Job answered in the New Testament by Jesus, so we're going to make a comparison. And that week that I announced it, my wife was diagnosed with cancer. And I'll never forget, in the doctor's office, she turned to me and she said, "You would have to pick the book of Job, wouldn't you?" And, you know, and I'm not saying that you should be superstitious by, you know, we're going to read the book of Job, what's going to happen to me this week. But I have discovered that the Lord does not want to allow the opportunities to be wasted. And sometimes he allows us to taste a little bit of the truth that we uncover. Well, yeah, the book of Job, and again, just if you are new to this, we are going through the Bible verse by verse. And I might aim at covering 2 chapters tonight, but we put the book down when the time's up. If we go a little bit deeper and pull back a little bit and move on, once the time's up, we will quit. But, you know, I'm ready. The book of Job is written principally about a single episode of this man's life, where several disasters that happen sequentially happen to him, and he finds himself during this period of time suffering in a way he never imagined was possible. It was a season of his life. I'm going to take a guess that it was several months long, the duration of it. I say that because over in chapter 7, verse 3, Job says, "You have allotted me months of affliction or misery, months of adversity." So I believe it was a period of several months. During that time, he loses his children. They die. Thieves, marauders take his goods. He loses his health, and he ends up with a very unsympathetic wife, and he is on a dunghill scraping the sores on his body. So you know that if you have read the book of Job. Here's something you may not know that I find fascinating, just a different take on it. If you were to study the Bible from a different vantage point, the vantage point of questions that are asked, how many questions are asked in the book of Job? There are no fewer than 330 questions asked in the book of Job. Now you compare that to other books of the Bible, they're significantly less. Book of Genesis, I think, has 180 questions. The book of, or 160 questions. The book of Matthew has like 180 questions. The longest book of the Bible, the book of Psalms, has about 180 questions. Job has 330 questions, most of them wondering about why God would allow this. And I think that's just an important facet, because when we suffer, that's what we do. When we suffer, we have lots of questions. And even if you try to get those questions answered, we have more questions. And we want the reason for this. Here's what I've discovered. Reasons don't help suffering people. If somebody could sit down with you and explain to you why God is allowing this trial to be in your life and what it's going to eventually lead to, that's not going to make you feel better. Or at least it's only going to make you feel mildly better. You don't need reasons, you need resources. God's resources. That's what you need during times of suffering. So 330 questions in this book. I mentioned when we were taking the Lord's Supper a moment ago that many of us believe this is the oldest book in the Bible. That is, it's the oldest book of the Bible. Not everybody shares that belief. I hold to that belief. I think it seems to be the oldest book. That is, we're dealing with somebody who lived between 2000 BC up to 1000 BC. Why do we think it's so old? Well, for a few reasons. There's no reference at all in the book to the law of Moses, which from Exodus on, you have references to the laws of Moses. There's no reference in the book of Job to previous Israelite history. It's almost like they didn't exist or they didn't exist yet. So no reference to the law of Moses, no reference to Israelite history. Also in the book of Job, names of places are ancient names. The land of Uz was an ancient name. The land of Sheba or Seba, the Sabians are mentioned, the Chaldeans are mentioned. So ancient monikers of places are given in this book, probably because it's very, very early. Another consideration is that Job's wealth, and he was extremely wealthy, is measured not in the amount of silver he had, as in other books of the Bible, but the livestock he owned, much like Abraham's wealth is described. The name of God used frequently in this book is Shaddai. The name Shaddai is Almighty. Shaddai is used in Genesis a lot and in Job a lot. So all of these are clues that would lead us to believe that Job was a very, very ancient person. And you get to the last chapter of Job and you find out how old he was when he died, 140 years of age. That puts that kind of lifespan back in those ancient patriarchal times. So it is my belief that Job was a contemporary or lived during the time of Abraham. And if I was in a class and my professor made me give a date to it, I would place it between Genesis 11 and Genesis 12. After the Tower of Babel, before Abraham enters the land of Canaan. That's where I would place it. And I'm bringing that background up for this reason. It's a book about suffering. It's one of the oldest books in the Bible. And it goes to show you that people have been suffering a long time. Since time immemorial. People have gone through trials and struggles and heartache and hardship and pain. It goes all the way back to the earliest records. Verse 1. There was a man, stop there. This is a book about a real man. It is not an allegory. It is not a parable. It's about a real person with a real life who had real suffering. Job will be mentioned in the book of Ezekiel, chapter 14. And the mention of it is with two other historical figures, Noah and Daniel. And God is announcing through the prophet Ezekiel that he's going to bring judgment. And he said, even if Noah, Daniel, and Job were alive in this land, only they would be delivered because of their righteousness. Everybody else would go into captivity. So because you have two other historical persons, Noah, Daniel, along with Job, that also lends credibility to this being not a parable, not an allegory, but a real person. There was a man. Then you get to the book of James, and James says, you have heard of the perseverance or the patience of Job. And you have seen the end, how the Lord is merciful and compassionate, and how God blessed him more at the end than at the beginning. So it's a real book about a real person. And there are specific names that are in this book. Names of people, names of places. You don't get that when you deal with parables and allegories. So there was a man in the land of Uz. And of course, he's related to a wizard who lived, the Wizard of Uz. No, that didn't happen. But the land of Uz is an ancient name. It's an ancient name for Edom. The Edomites lived there. What is south of the Dead Sea, southeast of the Dead Sea. And there's a picture behind me. This is kind of the area that he lived in. It is the area of modern day Jordan, southern Jordan, northern Arabia. Very stark. You think it's stark around these parts. That makes the moon look lush. I mean, it's just barren, rocky wilderness, although there are oases during that, and there's high country, and it is my belief that Job didn't live out in these desert regions, but up in those oases in the higher regions. There was a man in the land of Uz whose name was Job. And that man, listen to the description. Anybody would love this as a description of his or her life. Blameless and upright, one who feared God and hated or shunned evil. When it says he was blameless, it does not mean that he was perfectly sinless. It means he was morally upright. When it says he is upright, it's a word that means to go straight ahead and not veer off the path. That's what the word designates. To walk straight ahead and not veer off the path. In other words, a man of integrity. He walked the straight and narrow, we would say. He's an upright man. He feared God. That is, he respected God. He worshiped God. He loved God. And his fear was doing something to displease the Lord. So he feared God and he hated evil. It's setting him up. This verse is very descriptive and very necessary for what follows, because you would not expect normally a person this awesome to go through this kind of suffering. But that's who he was. And verse 2, 7 sons and 3 daughters were born to him. So he had 10 kids. Big household. My mother lived in a household where there were 9 of them. She had 7 brothers as well, but just one sister. So crazy kind of an upbringing, people sleeping on top of one another, but different situation here. 7 sons, 3 daughters were born to him. Also, his possessions were 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, 500 female donkeys, and a very large household. So he had servants like Abraham did. So that this man was the greatest of all the people in the East. The word greatest, and some of you who know Hebrew, like Matt, who remember this word, the word is gadol. Gadol. When it says he's the greatest, gadol, which means large. He was the largest man in the East. And that doesn't mean he was overweight. It just means he was significant and very, very well-to-do. So he was the greatest of all the people. Think of an Arabian sheikh, somebody who had great power, was over lots of people, and was well-known. So he's the greatest or the heaviest. He's a heavyweight back in those days of the people of the East. Now, his sons would go and feast in their houses, each on his appointed day, and would send and invite their 3 sisters to eat and drink with them. I think this is kind of cool. You know, the boys traded off having the party at their house. And so the sisters wouldn't have to bother on the feast day. You know, you all invited to our house. So these 7 guys, these 7 sons traded off having the festive meal. We don't know if it was a daily celebration or it was like a yearly celebration, like birthday celebration. But they traded off having the feast at the 7 boys' homes. And the sisters would come and eat and drink with them. So it was, when the days of feasting had run their course, that Job would send and sanctify them. And he would rise early in the morning and offer burnt offerings according to the number of them all. For Job said, "It may be that my sons have sinned and have cursed God in their hearts." Thus Job did regularly. Let me suggest that you do this for your children. Job had adult children. They grew up. He knew they liked to party. And so he goes to prayer for them every day, that God would keep them, that God would forgive them. Some of you have children you're just not quite sure about. They've grown up, you know, your influence in their lives isn't what it used to be. Get up in the morning, pray for them. It's one of the best things you could do. Now, I'm not suggesting you go kill a goat and have a burnt offering like Job did, but that's another reason that we think it's in the patriarchal period, because obviously there is no priesthood in Israel because there's no nation of Israel. So this is the ancient practice of the husband, the father, being the priest of his own home. So like the tribal leader, he's taking animals, sacrificing them, having the fear of God, praying for his children. So you get a picture of this man. He is very wealthy, he's very renowned, and yet he is very godly. Large family, very godly, very wealthy, very godly. And it is going to be, he's serving the Lord, and you might think, well, anybody that has that, you know, that kind of loot and God has blessed him is going to be serving the Lord. And that is going to be Satan's whole spiel, his whole contention, is that's the reason Job is following you, because he is the greatest man in all the East. You have made him that way. But I find it interesting. I find it fascinating that in verse 5, the reason, the motivation behind this daily getting up and sacrificing for his sons is he has this hunch. For Job said, "It may be that my sons have cursed God in their hearts and sinned." Now, why on earth would Job think that? Well, wait till chapter 2 and you meet Mrs. Job. Because Mrs. Job suggests to her husband what? Curse God and die. Could it be that the influence of this woman in the children's life was enough that Job said, I got to offset that? She has a propensity to blame a lot of things on God, and that's not a good role model in this house. So I'm going to get up and counteract that and go to prayer for these kids and sacrifice for them, because maybe they have cursed God in their hearts. Thus, Job did regularly. Now, there was a day, and this now sets up the behind the scenes, behind the stage goings on of the book. There was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came among them. Of course, Job does not know any of this, right? We have the book of Job. Job will wish he had the book of Job. He doesn't have that resource. We have it. We can look and we can acknowledge and we can study and we can break it down. Oh, that's why this is happening. He didn't have it. It just happened to him. And he has to figure out with his friends, why is this happening? So there was a day when the sons of God, and that is a phrase that almost always refers to the angels of God. Genesis chapter 6 uses that phrase. Job chapter 42 uses the phrase, the sons of God, as being a synonym for the angels of God at creation. So there came a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came among them. The name Satan isn't really a name, it's a title. It means adversary. I believe his name was originally Lucifer. We call him the devil. Satan means adversary. This is the first time in Scripture that this official title is used for him, is Job chapter 1. So there came a day, the angels of God, the sons of God, come to give an account, and Satan also came among them. Did you know that Satan is not in hell? Contrary to popular opinion. Satan is not in hell. He has never been in hell. Now, he'll go there one day. That is his ultimate end. And when he goes there, he's not going to be the head of it, the chief of it. He's going to be the chief victim of it. Hell is prepared, Jesus said, for the devil and his angels. But he is not in hell. That's fact number one that we find out about. He's not in hell. He has access to God. He has access to God. He is wherever this took place in the heavenlies, even though he's been kicked out of heaven, he has temporary visiting rights, you might say, to give an account, which is an important second fact. He is accountable to God. Satan is on a leash. It's longer than I would like. I sometimes wonder why it's not shorter. I have an idea why. I have reasons for it, but now is not the time. But he is accountable to God. That is, Satan does operate in the earth, but he operates within the parameters of God's will. He can't just do what he wants willy-nilly without God allowing him to go so far. Again, I don't know why the leash is as long as it is, but he has to get permission. In the New Testament, you remember the demons asked Jesus, permit us to go into that herd of swine. He had to give them permission to do that. So Satan operates within the parameters of God's will. So Satan is here, accountable to God. Satan's among them. And the Lord said to Satan, from where do you come? So Satan answered the Lord and said, hiss. I just did that for effect. From going to and fro on the earth, and from walking back and forth on it. Where you been, Satan? Oh, cruising central. Just going around the earth. Now we know what he is doing. Peter said, your adversary, the devil, roams around like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. That's what he's doing. Cruising the earth, looking for prey. And the Lord said to Satan, have you considered my servant Job, that there is none like him on the earth, a blameless and upright man, one who fears God and shuns evil? Now here it is as a question. It is best rendered as a rhetorical question. In other words, you have been considering my servant Job, haven't you? This brings us to point number 3 about Satan. He studies people. He considers them. He notices things about them. He understands our propensities, our weak points. Listen, he's been doing this a long time. Before you were even, and I were even here, for thousands of years, Satan has understood humanity and human nature. And he understands our vulnerable points. He studies us. It's an eerie kind of a thought, but it's a true thought. Have you ever been like in a restaurant or in a store and you just get this weird feeling, and then you turn and you notice there's some dude over there, some gal staring at you. You know, it's like their eyes were locking in on you this whole time and you just noticed it? Creepy feeling, right? Eerie feeling. You've been considering my servant Job, haven't you? Have you considered him? You know what this guy's blameless. He's upright. He fears God. He shuns evil. In the New Testament, in Luke chapter 22, Jesus and Peter are having a conversation. And it is at the hour of Jesus' greatest trial in the upper room. And Jesus says, Peter, or Simon, he uses the old name, Simon, Satan has been asking about you. He wants to sift you like wheat, but I prayed for you. And when you are returned, strengthen your brethren. Well, thanks for the prayers, but wow, what a revelation. Satan's been asking for me by name. Yeah, he's been asking about you, but I prayed for you. So Satan studies us. He's not in hell. He has access to heaven. He's accountable to God. He studies mankind. And so Satan answered the Lord, verse 9, and he said, does Job fear God for nothing? Have you not made a hedge around him, around his household, and around all that he has on every side? You have blessed the works of his hands, and his possessions have increased in the land. Now that brings up another characteristic about Satan. He accuses people. He studies us. He finds our weak points. He brings it up before God. He is called the accuser of the brethren, who accuses us before God night and day. You might recall, if not, just jot this down and look at it later, but in Zechariah chapter 3, almost at the very end of the Old Testament, Zechariah chapter 3, Zechariah, as you know, is a series of visions the prophet gets. In the 3rd chapter, he gets a vision of Joshua the high priest standing before the angel of the Lord, and Satan standing at his right hand to accuse him, to oppose him. So that's one of his dirty little tricks. He accuses you before God. And I'm guessing you've heard some of those accusations. You call yourself a Christian. Look at you, right? You've heard those little voices. that cause guilt and shame and distance. And you know, Satan is such a creep about it. He entices you. He says, oh, go ahead, do that. You'll enjoy that. Nobody will care. Nobody, it's okay. And then as soon as you do it, he comes and says, I can't believe you did that. And the guilt is piled on. You call yourself a Christian. All those accusations, you've experienced it. He said, look, you've made a hedge about him and his household and all that he has on every side. You've protected him. You've blessed the work of his hands, and his possessions have increased in the land. Stretch out your hand and touch all that he has, and he will surely curse you to your face. So the Lord said to Satan, behold, all that he has is in your power. Only do not lay a hand on his person. Then Satan went out from the presence of the Lord. What is the accusation? The accusation is this: God, the only reason Job serves you is because you bought him off. He serves you because he's a mercenary. You give him so much, you bless him so much. Take that stuff away, he won't love you. And so here's the challenge. Can God be loved and worshiped for who he is alone? Or must it always include for what he does and what he gives? What if God strips away the favor and the blessing and he still is who he is? Can God be worshiped then? So in this is the challenge. This is like the divine, epic story of all stories. The gauntlet gets thrown down. The challenge is on. Of course, Job doesn't know this. It'd be helpful if Job had the book of Job, but he doesn't have it. So Satan went out from the presence of the Lord. Now there was a day when his sons and daughters were eating and drinking wine in their oldest brother's house. Okay, there's a series of 4 tragedies that will occur. Here's the first. And a messenger came to Job and said, the oxen were plowing, the donkeys feeding beside them. And when the Sabians are people that live in Sheba. You remember the queen of Sheba? This is Arabia, northern Arabia. The Sabians, a marauding band of nomads, raided them and took them away. And indeed, they have killed the servants with the edge of the sword, and I alone have escaped to tell you. While he was speaking, another also came and said, the fire of God fell from heaven and burned up the sheep and the servants and consumed them, and I alone have escaped to tell you. Stop there. This servant says to Job, it's the fire of what? God, right? Probably referring to a lightning strike that caused a wildfire that burned this up. Fire of God. Actually, who sent the fire? Satan. Yes, God gave, go ahead. Challenge is on, but don't touch his person. So the second tragedy that happens is a lightning strike, fire from heaven, that the servant mistakenly calls, this is God's fault. You know, it always always has bothered me a little bit when I read some of these insurance contracts and it talks about acts of God. You're not insured in case there's an act of God. What about acts of Satan? Look around the world at all the tragedy that happened. Don't call it an act of God. Satan is the prince of this world. I alone have escaped to tell you. Verse 17, while he was still speaking, another also came and said, the Chaldeans, another from Mesopotamia now, another band of marauding nomads, the Chaldeans formed 3 bands, raided the camels, and took them away. So your camels are gone. And I don't think Job would walk a mile for a camel. Now, some of you got that joke, right? How many of you got that joke? Raise your hand. Okay, these are the old people of our congregation. That's an old commercial. You know, I can't resist some of these. It's a perfect setup. So the camels are gone. He has to go to Marlborough now with the edge of the sword. I alone have escaped to tell you. While he was still speaking, another also came and said, your sons and daughters were eating and drinking in their oldest brother's house, and suddenly a great wind came from across the wilderness and struck the 4 corners of the house, and it fell on the young men. And here's the phrase, they are dead. Your children have died. And I alone have escaped to tell you. Now, there are winds that come up in that area that can be very devastating. I lived in Israel when every year in the spring they had this crazy desert wind called the Khamsin, which is now also called the Sirocco in certain parts. But it can wreak havoc. And building codes weren't what they are today. This house collapsed. The children died. Then Job arose and tore his robe and shaved his head and fell to the ground and what? Worshipped. Worshipped. Oh, the only reason Job serves you is because you have lavished him with blessing. Take it away, he'll curse you. He worshiped him. Everything was taken away in an instant. Only 4 servants survived. He lost his servants. He lost his livestock. He lost his children. And he's about to lose his health. He arose, tore his robe, shaved his head, fell to the ground, and he worshiped. I know we've read this before. Let it sink in. One day, Job is in the backyard barbecuing falafels with his boys. Everything's great. Livestock are in good shape. Happy servants, large family, great wealth. The next day, everything is stripped away. Here is a man who is righteous. Here is a man who is godly. Here is a man, no one deserved this less than Job. There's nobody alive who deserved this less than Job. No one suffered more than Job, or few people have suffered more than Job. To lose everything. Now this brings up a category of study. This is one of the biggest problems in faith. It's a category of study, but more than a category of theological study, it's a real problem when you talk to people about God and they always ask you the question, how could a God of love allow evil to suffer and suffering to the extent that it is in the world? How can a good God allow an evil world? Why didn't he put a stop to it? This is one of the biggest problems you have faced.
Yung open ng etong current 4 hours na to, umakyat muna siya sa taas, gumawa ng etong parang miso ata to parang failure na mini structure dito. Ito kasi mitigated na to hindi na natin titingnan yun nandito. Ang titingnan natin ngayon kung ano yung gagawin ng price. Kailangan niya munang gumawa ng sa 5 minutes, no? Kailangan niya munang gumawa ng mini structure dito bago ko makuha tong semi structure sa loob nito. Itong malaking candle na to, mini structure dito, tapos sa 1 minute din tayo ko muna to failure dito, tapos itong range na ito may setup din dito. Ito yung stop loss, ito yung entry. Yes, pababa. Targeting itong 4 hour na to kasi yung context dito is wala namang sweep nung 4 hour pag open ng bagong 4 hour. Kung malakas talaga 'to, dapat nag-sweep siya tapos pataas, taas, taas. Pero wala nangyari. So, shortable siya. Yung sa sinabi ko kanina na huwag ka mag-short dito kasi mali-liquidate ka. Ito, mali-liquidate ka sa itong move na ito. Mali-liquidate ka dito. Tapos ngayon, mitigated naman siya. Nag-try siya, no? Kaya itong surf dito, nag-try siya pataas. Pero, failure pa rin yung price.
When you have shared your faith. That area of study is called theodicy. Theodicy simply means justice of God. How can God be just, all-loving, all-powerful, so he could do something about it, and if he loved people, he would do something about it, but he doesn't do anything about it, it seems. How is that compatible? How is a loving, powerful, just God compatible with a world filled with suffering? Now, I've attacked this subject and dealt with it and explained it many different series, many different occasions. So I'm not going to, delve into it to the extent that I have in those places. But that has become, in our faith journey and in our sharing with unbelievers, a real problem. Why does evil exist if there is a good God? First of all, we know evil does exist. There's no arguing about that. Evil exists. It's not an illusion, unless you are a Christian Science believer. Christian Science is a branch, it's not a Christian, it's a cult, but it's a group of people, if you've ever seen Christian Science reading rooms, etc., that believes that suffering, death, and pain are all an illusion. That aside, we know that not to be true. It's very real. It is universal. Evil exists. Number two, if there is a God, and there is, if he's a good God, and he is, if he's all-powerful, and he is, he certainly does allow evil and pain and suffering to exist. He does. Now, I'm putting the pause button because though I just made that statement, that God allows evil to exist, did you know there's another branch of belief that says God would like to do something about the evil in our world, but he just can't? This is called process theology. God is in process, and he's becoming a better God every single day because he's learning more. He knows more today than he did yesterday because he's been able to observe everything since he made everything. He's now able to observe it, and he's not perfect, he's not sovereign, he's not totally in control, but this open theology, this idea is God is in process, and he cannot sovereignly control the universe that he made. Okay, that's nonsense. I know that you know better. So evil exists, God allows it to exist, so we have to ask, why does God allow evil to exist? And again, I am not going to go into, I've done a few series on this. But did you know, and I bet you did know, that suffering can be very beneficial? It can be very beneficial to the believer. What do I mean? Number one, it purifies you. Remember Peter in 1 Peter talked about the trials that purify your faith, even though you're going through a whole season of them. They're refining you, refining your faith. If you really want to find out what a person believes about God, take him away from the theology book, take him away from the theology class, put him in a trial. Once that person suffers enough, the veneer is stripped off and you really start seeing what that person believes about God. Job has lost everything and he worships. So suffering purifies us. Number two, suffering humbles us. Humbles us. Paul said that happened in my own life. I was humbled by a thorn in the flesh, lest I should be exalted above measure by the visions and revelations that I have received, the abundance of them. God allowed Satan to give me a thorn in the flesh to keep me humble. Third, suffering makes you dependent upon God because now you realize your own resources and strength are diminished and you don't trust in your youth and strength and resources financially. When that gets stripped away, you start leaning on the everlasting arms more than ever before. So Paul said, I asked God to take this thing away, and he just said, nope. I asked 3 times, and God said, nope, nope, nope. My strength is enough for you. Not your strength, my strength. You depend on me, you lean on me. And trials will do that. It causes you to lean and depend on him. So they can be beneficial. That aside, I'm fascinated with Job's response. First of all, Job does what we expect him to do. He grieved. He tore his clothes, shaved his head. These are expressions in antiquity of grief. When tragedy happens, you should grieve. When you lose somebody and they die, you should grieve. When I see people at a funeral and somebody goes, boy, look at her, look at him. He's so strong. He didn't shed a tear. That's not healthy. You've heard of good grief? There is such a thing as good grief. You do it right, you do it good, it's good, it's healthy. You work through the process. So that's expected. He tore his clothes. shaved his head. He cried out. What is not expected is that he worshiped. He fell to the ground and he worshiped, and he said, naked I came from my mother's womb, naked I shall return there. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Okay, the veneer is stripped away. Now you discover what Job really thinks about God. And what Job really thinks about God is exactly what God told Satan he thinks about God. Just like the description in verse 1, blameless, upright, fears God, hates evil. That's who he is, at the core. At the core, when everything is taken away. When you come to a place where he goes, yeah, I've lost everything, but I came into this world kind of that way. I had nothing. And I'm going to leave that way. So the Lord gives, the Lord takes away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Job is not mercenary. He's not only worshiping God for what God can bless him with and give him things for, but because of who God is. Blessed be the name of the Lord. See, pain will move you. Pain will always move you in some direction. It'll move you to him. It'll move you away from him. It'll move you into yourself. It'll move you in some direction. And you've heard me say this and others say this so many times. Pain will make you better or bitter or battered. Some people are bitter. They're just angry, always mad. And you trace it back, and their expectations weren't met. Suffering happened, grief happened, loss happened. They expected that not to ever happen because God should have a hedge about me. But it happened. So they get angry, they get bitter, and that bitter gets more acrid as time goes on. Some people become just battered. They just kind of grit their teeth and muster through it, and yeah, kind of expect this in life. A lot of bad things happen. You just kind of just become crusty, battered. But some people actually become better.
Target filled.
Some people are like tea bags. The flavor comes out when you put them in hot water. Ooh, what an aroma. Fragrant. They're better. Job is better. Naked I came from my mother's womb. Naked I shall return there. The Lord gives, the Lord is taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. In all this, Job did not sin, nor charge God with wrong. Do you see what is happening here? Sometimes God will calm the storm in your life. Other times God will calm you in the storm of life. The storm is battering around you. The waves are billowing over you. But God keeps you calm in the midst of it. Again, verse 1 of chapter 2. Again, there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord. And Satan came also among them to present himself before the Lord. It's that account of
you.